The name of this video is I'm Dead Jim, playing on the words of what McCoy says when he says he's dead Jim, and you'll find out why in the Star Trek fan fiction. You ready? Captain's Log 2034. It's been 18 months since the warp core drive on the Enterprise froze solid, killing 370 crew members in an ice chamber in space. 27 crew managed to beam down to the planet Olympia, and another 18 escaped on shuttlecraft, including the entire bridge crew. I'm starving to death, and I can't eat any more of this shit, Dr. McCoy said, tossing a handful of leaves into the fire pit. If I lose any more weight, I'll blow away in the wind. Nobody else has a problem with it, Kirk replied, chewing on the plant. It's not all that bad. We all need some protein in our diet, McCoy said, and there is no reliable source on this godforsaken shithole of a rock. What do you propose, Doctor? Spock asked. The Vulcan sat across the fire pit from McCoy with a handful of roots and tubers. I propose the only thing that makes sense. We need to start eating our dead. This isn't the Donner Party, Kirk stated. We don't eat each other. You're wasting away, McCoy stated. You can deny it all you want, but you've lost a fourth of your muscle mass. That wound on your arm hasn't healed in weeks, and half of the crew is sick. We've only lost 2 crew since we've landed, Spock stated. We don't have enough dead to make a difference, and they are long buried and decomposed. Kirk spoke up. You're not thinking what I think you're thinking, Bones. We need to do what we need to do to survive, McCoy said. We need to sacrifice crew so the others will live. And how do you propose to do that? Spock asked. Hell, I don't know, McCoy replied. Draw straws. Kirk was astounded by McCoy's proposal. I don't suppose you'd volunteer to be the first, would you? I'm the ship's surgeon, McCoy replied. I'm needed here, unlike some of the others who are wasting resources and taking up space. You sound like a Nazi, Kirk replied. I, for one, am not giving an order to murder and eat any of my crew. Then you sentence the rest of us to death, McCoy replied. Who died and made you God? Kirk asked. If you won't make the decision that could save lives, then I will give you a medical leave of command, McCoy yelled. That is within the scope of the doctor's authority, Spock said, but he would need for me, as second in command, to agree with his proposal. Do you agree, Spock? Kirk asked. I don't think we are at the point where it would be necessary to kill and consume any crew members. The indigenous food we have been eating will sustain us for at least a few more months. In the meantime, our bodies will start to fail. By the time the crew die, by natural causes, there won't be enough meat on their bones to make a difference. There is no natural protein in these weeds we've been eating to keep us alive. Sorry, Bones. You've been outvoted, Kirk said, shaking his head. McCoy tried to stand up, but the lack of calcium in his diet made his bones brittle, and he creaked and cracked as he stood. Then his hip broke, and he fell back to the ground, snapping 3 ribs. Fuck, McCoy said, grabbing his hip and chest. Are you all right, Bones? Kirk asked the wounded doctor. Are you serious? McCoy replied. I hurt like hell. Spock observed the doctor and said, We don't have the resources to provide you adequate medical care, Doctor. No shit, McCoy replied in pain. The best we can offer is to put you out of your misery, Spock stated, pulling out his phaser. Put that fucking thing away, McCoy yelled. I will survive this somehow. I don't see how that would be possible without proper nutrition and the ability to replace your broken hip. My hip is not your concern, you son of a bitch. Your hip is unfortunately everyone's concern. Your body, in its current condition, could provide protein to the entire crew for a week, Spock replied. McCoy fished for his phaser, but couldn't find it. He quickly noticed it in the left hand of Kirk, who was leaning back into his seat. Give that back, McCoy yelled at Kirk. Sorry, Bones, but I think Spock is correct. You had the idea to use the crew as my protein source, and it is fitting that you will be the first to provide the nutrition we all need at this critical time. What are you going to do? Hang me up on a spit and roast me like a fucking pig? We will have to discuss that later, after you're dead, Kirk replied. But that does sound like the most plausible scenario. I changed my mind, McCoy said. If you look hard enough, you will find adequate protein on the planet. You need to try harder. Spock replied, I don't think so, Doctor. We have exhausted all the protein we have available, and there is no natural source that our sensors have detected. You said as much yourself. Eat someone else first. Eat Chekhov. He's a fucking waste of time anyway. Chekhov doesn't have a broken hip or rib, Spock replied. Without a source of calcium, your bones won't heal. Chekhov has bones. I can use his calcium stores to repair myself. You know that will work. Kirk pointed his phaser at the doctor and shot him in the head. Gather supplies and make a spit. The more material to get the good fire going. Captain's Log 2345.5. The survivors of a shuttlecraft crash on the planet Yondo Tetero gather around a fire, finishing off the body of Ensign Pavel Chekhov, as his flesh roasts over the red-hot glowing coals in the dim light of dusk. For 3 weeks, Kirk, Spock, Scott, and McCoy have staved off starvation, picking off one crew member at a time. But now, time is running out. Water is available in the replicator, but the carbon stores were damaged in the accident, rendering food replication impossible. Chekhov was the 4th crew member served up and the last non-commissioned officer aboard. Without refrigeration, Chekhov's body will last one more day. Now what? McCoy asked. I'll take off before any of you tries to eat me. The distress call reached Starbase 3 weeks ago. We should be rescued any day, Kirk replied. At warp 10, it would take Starfleet 2 days to reach us, 5 at the most. What do you think they're going to do with us when they find out we ate 4 of our crew? McCoy asked. Give us all medals and a ticker tape parade for surviving on this crap hole planet, Kirk replied. Nobody will care. I'm sure Chekhov's family will care, McCoy said, looking up at the body rotating on the spit. McCoy jabbed at the carcass with a stick and tore off a piece of Chekhov and ate it. He followed with a gulp of water. There's nothing you can do now, Scott said, and for one, I'd rather be alive than dead. What are you going to say when they ask how we decided who lived and who was lunch? McCoy asked. We didn't exactly ask for volunteers. They don't know that, and you don't have to tell them, Kirk replied. We say they were injured in the crash and didn't recover. That might work for you, me, and Scott, but not Spock. The Vulcans don't lie, and he won't go with the story. Right, Spock? McCoy asked. Vulcans are compelled to tell the truth, Spock said, but under extenuating circumstances, we have been known to bend the truth, Spock said. Is this one of those extenuating circumstances? McCoy asked. I would say so, Spock replied. I would hope so. You seemed to enjoy Chekhov more than we did, McCoy replied. Scott spoke up. What if Starfleet takes longer than 2 days? Kirk shook his head and looked up at Scott. I guess we draw straws. Or someone volunteers, Kirk replied. That's more than we offered our crew. Volunteer my ass, Scott yelled. You won't get me on that. He added as he reached for his phaser. They all had one. Then I guess we all starve and die, Kirk said with a smile. What else can we do? What else can we do? Scott replied. I, for one, am not going to worry about getting off this rock. I know Starfleet will pick us up and save us. Probably before you know it, Kirk said, poking the fire with a stick. The smoke drifted in the air and blew with the wind. We should do something with the remains, Spock said. Tradition says we should respect the dead. They'll just dig them up anyway and give the bodies to the families. Waste of time and energy. We need to conserve our energy. Technically, we can live 30 days without eating, McCoy said. Are you serious? Scott asked. We didn't have to kill anyone? Why didn't you say something earlier? I'm not in charge, McCoy stated. You're the medical officer. You should have said something. We didn't have to kill 4 crew members, you sick bastard, Scott said. And Spock, you'd knew as well. You're the science officer. It is true we could survive 30 days without food, but it is best that we eat if food is available. Without proper nutrition, we would become weak, our mental capacity would fluctuate, and our chance for overall survival would diminish, Spock replied. We made the best choice for our situation and for our survival. Do you hear what you're saying? Scott asked. We murdered 4 people. I don't think murder is the best choice of words, Spock replied. Reallocation of resources would be more accurate. They don't hang people for reallocation of resources. They hang them for murder, Scott said, shaking his head. 6 of one, half a dozen of another, Kirk said smugly. Nobody's going to charge us for anything. Don't get your panties in a bunch, engineer. Scott stood up and drew his phaser. I'm not going down for something that was out of my control. I would never have killed or eaten any of our crew if I knew I could survive for 30 days. Sit down and shut up, Kirk said, unless you want to be next. Oh, don't worry. I won't be next, Scott said. He shot his phaser at Chekhov, knocking his body onto the coals, kicking up black smoke. I'm the one holding all the cards. McCoy pulled his phaser and shot Scott in the leg, knocking him over. Kirk reached over and pulled Scott's phaser from his hand. I told you to sit down, Kirk said smugly. Just then, a signal came over the shuttle speaker. It was Starfleet Command pinging an incoming message. See, Kirk said, all of our problems are solved. We'll be off this rock in no time. What about Scott? Spock asked. Kirk shot Scott in the head so he wouldn't talk, and soon the crew was rescued. And today we have Scotty, and we have Kirk, and we have Mr. Spock. They were all in today's fan fiction story, and I hope you enjoyed it. Ring-a-ding the bell if you want to hear more of these, because if you ring the bell, you'll be posted when they show up. He fell down. Fan fiction is my thing. I'm up to like 14 of these now. I hope you enjoyed that. That was a fun one, a little bit morbid, but hey, we need to get off the beaten path and do some new stuff. Ready? Thank you.